We're drinking 20-year-old Pappy Van Winkle bourbon, the pride of Kentucky. Since the 80s, we've really gone through a series of steps, which has led to the chef-owner restaurant. And I think those create the best environments for creating a food culture. And so now they're really starting to pop up, a couple to three per year, and that's really helping define the scene. Big is not bad. I stand up in front of school kids and talk to them about food, like, who here says cheeseburgers are bad for you? And so they all raise their hand. Chef, me. It's me. Cheeseburgers are bad, And I said, no, cheeseburgers aren't bad. Right? What's wrong with fresh baked bread, grass-fed beef, real cheese, heirloom tomatoes, homemade mustard? There's nothing bad at all. Actually, that sounds pretty awesome. It's the method and the process that we think we need to compromise because we're getting big. The whole beautiful thing of being big is you can start cutting your costs and create a better economic impact on your agricultural systems. So, for example, the bread company we have, it started out with about 300 pounds of bread a day. We're in a 2,200 square foot space. Now we're jumping to, we're putting out about 3,000 pounds on a busy day. We're expanding way beyond the limits of this size. So we're moving to a 10,000 square foot space at the end of the summer. Now, the whole idea, the mission is we bake fresh bread every day. So the model will be, I can put our bread on the grocery store shelves, but we have to put it on every day. Everything else has been towards how can we preserve food so we don't lose it. And they preserve it with a lot of stuff that we don't want to really eat. So if you create a model of distribution and restocking that's around fresh every day, that's the model. You may have some higher costs, you can't hit 20% profit. If you just make between like 5% profit to 7% profit, and the farmer makes 5% profit, that's a great sustainable model. Fast food's not bad either. I love hamburgers and french fries. If I do go through a drive-through, you can have the same execution of speed with high-quality ingredients and still have a profitable, sustainable business. I think it's a baby step system. When my wife and I went into our kids' school, E-Rivers, to say, hey, we want to change and make the food fresh, we realized what a big swimming pool or ocean we were diving into, where at a time when the APS was pulling kitchens out of all our schools and they're just retherming stuff made in a giant commissary kitchen, it was a fight to get bottled water served to our kids. And so they're stepping into a big fight, a lot of big money, and a lot of people that get scared saying how somehow this method is going to hurt their business. But I think people will start to realize this is going to help their business. It's going to build long-term profitability. You're going to be free of any kind of lawsuits because you're clean. So the government, yes, has to be involved, but the corporations need to embrace that they can be the leaders, or unfortunately what's going to happen, which is already happening, the government will come in and legislate as a restaurant what we can and cannot serve. We need to, as an industry, lead that first, or otherwise we're going to be victims of some bad legislation. There's no way to humanely kill a chicken, for example. You're going to kill that bird. And if you say, I'm killing an animal for food, then I could go to any ethical, humanely raised farm, the nicest people in the world, and I can show you pictures of birds being killed. It ain't pretty. You got blood, you got necks being spun. I mean, this is farming. So I'm a meat eater. I know that if we're going to go that way, if I'm going to go that way, then I need to be a witness to all of that, to that kind of sacrifice. And it's something we ask our cooks to do, so we go to slaughterhouses. Once you do that, though, you recognize you have a responsibility. You're not going to overcook that pork chop. The only book I require any of my cooks to have is a Escoffier. Because what's so great is I could turn to you and say, I need you to make gratin force meat 237. And we immediately have a language of how to cook as professionals. Every cook should know gratin force meat. Now that doesn't mean we may use glutamate to help set meat against each other and create some fun, neat things. But that is what Escoffier predicted. He says there will be starches and binders in the future that I don't even know about. that will help in this constant refinement of what cuisine is. To talk about food, it seems like we're always talking about the past. And that's the way I feel too. I take our profession very seriously about where we come from. And that's why I think you can't dive into the now immediately unless you have an understanding of all the palette and tools of what you're doing. Everything, I look at my father, who's a doctor. He's 72. He just told me about 6 months ago, I'm going to start taking it easy, son. But then he's not taking Mondays off because he's involved in volunteer work, he's involved in civic activities, which I think is the hallmark of living in your city. You have to take care of your city. You don't punch in and out on who you are. This is who I am. I'm a father, a husband, a chef, a restaurateur. That's a one person. I'm an old hippie, actually, and I'm only 44, but, the classic of think globally, act locally. But then anyone, musical from Miles Davis and how he was traditional and modern at the same time. Any of those people that were seminal figures in anything. Claude Levi-Strauss with anthropology. I was an anthropology major in college, and the idea of defining a culture using our terms and our words as opposed to being in a culture and using their viewpoint of looking at things, I think is a valuable way. I actually use anthropology more now than I ever did. Whether it's someone like Beethoven, who I love his music, because first I just love the power of his music, but if you look at his handwritten works, it's constant editing. For me, I'm always about, I'll write it down like a menu item, and then I'll edit again, and then I'm editing, and I'm editing, and I'm editing. What lawyer who graduates out of Yale or Harvard says, I want to be on the People's Court? So why are we thinking somehow it's a noble calling to be on game shows that are culinary? And that's why I think the cooking channel maybe is going the right direction to getting back to real cooking. I loved cooking shows, not competition. I loved watching Julia Child or Graham Kerr or the great chefs of New Orleans or the great chefs of Europe, which was a chef in his kitchen actually showing and talking about a food and a dish. I know sometimes that's boring television. Maybe it's not exciting. It's not like Survivor. People are in some kind of game, swimming and jumping through hoops. But I'm scared of that value system being defined as our value system. Food has a great, powerful way of bringing people together. The classic example being if I, as a Southern white man, found myself in Afghanistan or Iran, with someone who would profess that they're my greatest political enemy just because of where I was born. But if we start talking about our grandparents' stews, whether it was roast lamb or a goat stew and potatoes and spices, the rules of host and guest as defined by all the ancient books, I would have a brother. If we could just get past this idea of forcing you to believe what I believe and recognizing that you may like potatoes fried and I may like them boiled or steamed, it doesn't matter. We both love potatoes. A lot of it links into timing. Some of my great meals are the first time I took my wife out to a fancy meal, auberge de Francois in Great Falls, Virginia, right outside of D.C., and I can still remember those sweetbreads and how wonderful they were, just stewed with mushrooms and pastry. It was just wonderful. Recently, Chris Costello, who's a buddy of mine out in California, in Meadowood, just got 3 Michelin stars. We've worked together. I did an event with him in his kitchen. We have a lot of fun together, and it was phenomenal. It was, the pace of it was so good. It was fun and lighthearted. I didn't feel so formal. It was really an example of how I think haute cuisine should be. Eating at Momofuku and just having a great time. I was by myself, sitting at a bar, about to go to another event. I just stopped in there. I was in the neighborhood and just got a bunch of fried shrimp heads. And I had a cold beer, and it was just beautiful. I did my last meal, La Condo Verde. And for a chef, sometimes the best things are the smallest things. Sent out the crostini of the day with fava beans and radish. I'd be with my family, without a doubt. My wife and our 2 kids. I would keep it a small party. I love our party of did it last night at home. We cooked yesterday. I was home all day, so I cooked lunch and dinner. We sat down to lunch and dinner together. I don't know what I would probably cook or if I was going to be served. It'd be a bunch of things, you know. I grew up where Sunday was a lamb roast my mom always made, and I just always loved that with baked rice. It'd be great wine. It'd be less about multi-course tastings or things like that, but it would probably be something I would cook and share with the kids, and they would be a part of it. You know, they set the table. There'd be great bread. There'd be great cheese. There'd be just a plethora of little plates of vegetables, you know, and whole roasts of things. I'm going to write that. Success is joyful, eternal dissatisfaction. You should always be dissatisfied with your performance in any professional arena. But you need to have an understanding and a compassion to yourself about that and be actually joyful.